order. First up is verification that the meeting was properly posted.
It was.
Awesome, thank you very much. Next up is opportunity for public comment. We have one speaker this evening, so the speaker will have up to 5 minutes to complete their comments and be notified when 3 minutes are up. We expect all speakers to honor our time limit, refrain from using any inappropriate language in any manner, and be respectful in their comments. Speakers are here to address the board and not the audience. Speakers who do not meet these expectations may be prohibited from speaking at future board and/or committee meetings. We also expect the audience will be respectful of the speaker and of the board and refrain from responding with verbal comments, cheering, applause, or other behavior that will detract from the meeting. Please note that no obstructions can be created between the board and the audience, and that the area behind the speaker and podium will be clear during public comment. Also, in order to respect our speakers and meeting participants, please silence your cell phone. Our one and only speaker this evening is Mr. Paul Reese.
Good evening. Tonight I'm coming here to talk about why we were out of school yesterday. I don't think that it was, I understand that it's Martin Luther King, we observe the holiday, but I don't think that's a reason to take off of school right during exams. One of the things King fought for was to keep kids in school. He didn't want kids out of school. He fought like crazy to get kids in school, to educate them so that they had a future. Not so they could sit home and play Xbox all day, because they ain't learning anything about King that way. There's nothing they learn about him sitting home. I am all for it. He is one of the most influential persons of the 20th century and deserves to be honored and taught and learned about. But no one has any idea what this guy what he thought, what he believed in. We just take a day off and observe him and name a street after him. He and I got our sense of right and wrong both came from the Word of God. How many people really understand what he believed in and why he was a great uniter? He united people because he taught what was right and wrong and argued a point based on Scripture that was undisputable. So, anyways, we take off a day during the week of exams to honor this person. Who does that hurt the most when we take a day off during a week of exams? Doesn't it hurt the ones on the bottom the most? We talk and we give lip service to wanting to close the achievement gap. Yet the week of exams, we close down our schools, which hurts the ones on the bottom the most. That's one less day they can get for tutoring. One less day of getting it on the front of their mind before the exam starts. I do understand the importance of Martin Luther King, and I'm not trying to understate that at all by wanting the kids in school that day. Matter of fact, I'm trying to emphasize it. It is better to have them there learning about him and taking an hour out of that day to teach about him than to set him home playing Xbox or PlayStation or whatever it is and not doing anything. But when we close down this week and take one day away, the ones on the bottom rung are hurt the most. And I think people do things out of pure reaction to something, out of emotion and not forethought. Because I don't know if Martin Luther King ever talked about keeping kids out of school. But I do know he talked about keeping them in. Anyways, thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address the board who didn't sign up? Excellent. Moving on to the action item portion of the meeting. First up, action item is approval of the minutes. Be looking for a motion.
Also move.
Thank you, Mark. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Anthony. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's none, 4-0. Next up is policy 5200, attendance.
Yeah, so this evening we have Ryan Pat, principal of West High School. He and Tom Shalmo from North High School and Maria D'Amato from South High School approached Rachel Herman and myself a couple weeks back to talk about the attendance policy. So for some background, for many years, longer than I can remember, we've allowed release for seniors. And with that has been a caveat that principals could create a incentive opportunity for students who are juniors to also have a release period. When we compare that to what's actually in policy, the policy doesn't align to what the practice was. And so Ryan will give you a little bit of background tonight on why they're requesting this change and what that looks like, just so that we would have some uniformity between policy and that opportunity that was allowed to principals for, again, as many years as anybody can remember.
Thank you, Dr. Cook. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me tonight. The other two principals I am speaking for them in good, honest faith. I did talk to both of them today. I sent the presentation to Dr. Cook and the other two principals. We've had discussion about this, so they're on board with this, and they're very aware of what I'm presenting. So gave them the night off, which is well earned for them. So as Dr. Cook said, really the rationale for the policy change is to allow for consistent interpretation of the policy among the high schools by adding the 11th grade students being able to have a release at least one class period or lunch. As it's written now, it only addresses 12th grade students. However, the policy does give latitude to put a system in place to really release any students. And so we just wanted to make sure we're on the same page as far as how the high schools interpret policy, and that's really what this is about. The previous practice is that West and South have been releasing 11th grade students for one period with parent permission as part of an earned privilege system for quite a few years. It's something that we have done. We followed this practice to keep study hall numbers low and manageable. To utilize our resources, we generally have limited student supervisors that monitor our study halls, so we want to make sure that those are lower numbers and more manageable. It obviously allows our students who are in good standing then to use that time accordingly. Some leave, some do not. Some go with a teacher, but some do other things. It just gives them more freedom to be able to do that. You put that along with, like our seniors do, with lunchtime, having a longer lunch, or at the end of the day to be able to get home and do some things for prior to activities and coming back. It works very well for that system. North didn't necessarily have the same need for a release because their 11th grade students in their study halls are not quite as large, so they have a little bit more management to have happen. So they were interpreting the policy as not really allowing students to leave, and that's why I'm here tonight to really change that policy to have the language where we can all interpret and allow juniors to go and have that same common process. All right, also in the policy it says that all high schools have given 11th grade students, or is about lunch release, so it doesn't talk about juniors having lunch release. We have done this for a long time as well. The reason for that, most recently, we used to have 3 lunches. During COVID, we went to 1 lunch. As with anything else, you're trying to limit a whole lot of people in multiple areas, and so we really keep lower numbers in our cafeteria. It's been important because now we're down to 2 lunches, and we can just barely fit all the students we have in both lunches with releasing juniors and seniors, and so that's something that we want to have in there. And then again, practice during COVID, and then we don't want to have our students trickle over into other areas. So during COVID, we had them go in the field house. Now you have our custodial staff spending a lot of time cleaning up our field house, court 1. You're adding bleachers, you're adding trash receptacles. So we want to try to keep them in an area for supervision as well as for just cleanliness and less work overall. So those are really some of the rationale components. And so I just want to give you the privilege system. So in following policy, seniors already had to follow this privilege system. We're adding, and our juniors have been doing this as well. It really talks about being in good standing means that if there's educational or disciplinary reasons at any time, we can revoke that. If there is, during progress and grading reports, we take a look at grades. If there's any failures, that will be revoked for a specific amount of time until they get that grade back up. Obviously, failing a course, e-achieve is also another component. We have students who, if they're not doing well in their e-achieve, we will have them stay in the building and make sure they're following through with that to support e-achieve. And then anything with tardiness or truancy also. So any one of those factors gives us leeway for individual situations with students to be able to revoke that release and use that as that privilege system to get them where they need to be in all those areas.
So the proposed policy change, if you look in your packet or look online there, it's on the first page of the policy. about two-thirds of the way down the page. There's a statement in red. Again, the strike-through feature is not working right now in board docs. So the statement in red is what's being proposed to be deleted. Juniors may be allowed to leave campus during lunch period only with written permission. So that's being deleted. The proposed change then is the building administration may allow seniors and juniors who have demonstrated a high level of maturity and personal responsibility to leave the premise. So it's the addition of juniors then in that subsequent sentence, and you can see that in green.
Any questions?
Just out of curiosity, has this program's been in place for a long time? Do you see the release of the students other than the logistics? Does that help with their day at all? Do you see better attention, better results, better outcomes in classes with this program being in place? Any of that, some of those things that, you and the other principals might see?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is our firm belief that students having that time during the day to be able to go see a teacher during study hall for academic purposes, to be able to focus and concentrate on their studies. As we continue to push for a more rigorous schedule, you add more rigorous courses, and now you're looking for students to have some time to be able to focus, to be able to do what they need to do, to be able to take a break. So if you have 8 hours during the day, that's a heavy course load, right? You're involved in anything else. That 1 hour reprieve, a little bit of flexibility, really, we believe, comes into play for mental health. Do I have specific data to back that? I don't have anything specific. I can say that it's a feature that's used often, and I know that many of our students who have a rigorous academic schedule, I can speak to that, covet that time and use it wisely and use it with a lot of flexibility to get their needs met, whether it's academically during that time, for a break at that time. A lot of our junior students will use it for work. They're starting to work and do those aspects. So depending on what your focus may be, you might get more time at work to be able to, be focused on something that is important to you during that time. So.
One of the things that the principals did share when we met and talked about this was once this privilege is granted to a student, they do everything they can to hang on to it. So the students themselves, the principals all shared where this is happening. Maria and Ryan both shared that the kids hang on to this one very, very tightly because they value the time.
Mr. Montiel.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pat. Excellently done. And this is a couple points. Number one, this is a great example of administration noticing something that needs to be changed at the board level, coming to the board with a clear, concise proposal, literally adding 2 words that will dramatically, I don't want to say change, but confirm what has been going on. So thank you for that. On top of all the things you do, you and your colleagues found that, and it's a solution that makes sense. I graduated Waukesha North in '95. We had release privileges for lunch. I don't remember if we had release privileges for study hall. But academic rigor then compared to now is completely different. It's much more intense. On top of that, our students not only have that, but their extracurriculars, outside sports, all these other things. And those are 14 times more intense than it was. When I played baseball, there was 2 practices a week, I think 1 practice a week and 1 game on the weekend. They're playing tournaments, there's dance, there's band, there's everything else. So as you mentioned, having that extra time during the school day is, I think, great. And to Dr. Cook's point too, to incentivize juniors, or at least confirm our policy to do that, is great. A lot of our work as board members is we look at, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So this is a great opportunity for administration, who are the boots on the ground, to identify those students and incentivize them to keep going. So it's great, fully support it. So thank you.
Just one question. You had mentioned on the capacity issues with lunches, and you said that you were having a little bit of, maybe not trouble, but with 2 lunches, having all the students that remain within those 2 periods. And correct me if I'm wrong, our West, I believe, is a little bit under the total capacity number, correct? So supposedly we have capacity within the school, like if we needed more students, but we're having somewhat of an issue in our cafeterias.
So, to my knowledge, from the beginning of of West, or the inception of West, there's been 3 lunches in every schedule.
Okay.
And so now that there can be limitations to 3 lunches, which is why we went to 2 lunches. And prior to us having 2 lunches, we said we can fit the students in. And we are fitting them in. Our goal is to not have to use our field house if we can help it. We are ready to do that, and we can do that. It's something we prefer not to do, but this helps ensure that we don't necessarily have to do it, or if we do it, it's on a small scale. So we are managing it well, and we knew that prior to having these 2 lunches, but this does help.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So just to make sure I'm clear on the change, it sounds like juniors can not only leave just for lunch, but it's that additional period? Is that really the essence of the change?
Yes.
Okay. And then you mentioned quite a few years that this has been going on. Do you have any idea how long?
I don't.
Okay. I don't know if anybody does.
Yeah, I've been here for 9 years. Ryan's been here for,
14?
at West, and it's been in place all of those years.
Oh, gotcha.
So, I mean, we're going way back in history when this has been, an acceptable practice in Waukesha.
Sure. And, I mean, not to make like a bigger issue of it than it is, but I'm just thinking of like policies in general that where something might be outside the policy for a long period of time before we, I guess, notice it or, do something about it. This is maybe a fairly minor thing.
This came to light due to a student transferring from one school to the next, having release in one location and not in the other, which is why the high school principals began to talk about it, and we thought it would be a good idea to have the policy addressed so that it can be applied uniformly everywhere. That says the board is giving the school principals the ability to implement this as an option. It wasn't an option in one location, which then said, hey, we want to make sure that, again, everybody would have access to it if they have met the standard.
Sure.
And occasionally, we have things like this come up where, you don't know what the practice is because it's been in place for a long time and it's never been a problem.
Right.
Sometimes those things rise to the surface and we have to rectify that problem.
Yeah, I mean, I realize not everybody's going to like memorize every policy, so, things like this can happen. Just making me think of big picture in general, other policies. So, I mean, I guess we've got the review process.
We review
That we do every
policies, we
year.
send all the updates out to the schools. We review the extremely important policies with our administrators when we hire them. We do several times a year, different types of policy reviews with them. But again, sometimes you have either changes in leadership or past practices at one location that kind of get passed down word of mouth, and they're not in policy, which is why we're here tonight.
All right. Thank you.
So even with the policy change, you may have a high school that doesn't allow it?
It's possible,
Yes.
but this way, through policy, it's then uniform.
They have the ability.
Board
to
is
do it.
saying it's
Right.
okay to do it.
Yep.
They have the ability then to implement it.
Okay. Alrighty, any other questions? Be looking for a motion? Approval of the policy change to 5200.
A move to approve the policy change at policy 5200 regarding attendance as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Montijo. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mark. Is there any further discussion on policy 5200 changes?
No.
Alrighty, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to discussion information items. First up is transition activities, a subject near and dear to my heart.
So we have Jason Gahan, Sue Poppy, and Laura Edwards here tonight. Last year, we made some adjustments to the WTA program, and we wanted to come back to you tonight and share with you the successes that's happening this year.
Excellent, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Good evening. As stated, the last time we appeared before you to talk about the Transition Academy was actually back in June. And at that point, if you recall hearing, there were some changes in motion, or at least some visioning in motion, some great discussion as to how we would like the school year to unfold. And here we are in January, so we thought it was a great time to come back before you and talk about how that vision to start the year has unfolded as the school year has gone on. So Laura Edwards is the department chair at our East Campus, and she's here to discuss what's been going on.
Thank you. So you'll see behind you, that is our fall, September 1st, 2022 WTA class. So our vision for this year was to move from school-based services to community-based learning activities. And the purpose was to develop work readiness skills, social and independent living skills in our young adults. Much of those services, due to COVID, had moved from community to in-building. And so we really wanted to relaunch those community experiences. We had talked in June about what transition was, and it's really that looking at that transition assessment and the post-secondary needs of our students, and then developing programming for those students aged 18 to 21 to help them be ready for adult living. So our vision for this fall for job exploration and work readiness was to still have those school-based learning activities for our students that weren't quite community ready. In addition to that, we wanted to expand and offer volunteer experiences. We were looking at co-ops within our school buildings to support the students, so that way they were engaged in community and not just at Waukesha Transition Academy, but still in safe, supported environments, as well as a variety of community internships and employment, paid employment. So what happened? This fall, we're excited to announce we are offering 3 school-based work experiences. One is at School Grounds, which is our coffee shop. Capabilities, which is a new store that we have launched, and we have some swag, and I'll share that with you as well. As well as our students are working in the cafeteria and prepping and serving the lunches for the entirety of Waukesha East. In addition to that, we have also launched our community work experiences. So we have students that are participating at the Hope Center, Experience Fitness, Restore, Katie's Closet. We have students that are working with our IT department, as well as students that were interning at Hatfield Elementary that had an interest in daycare. So we've really increased our community-based learning and work experiences for our young adults. So what are some successes that we've had? Right now, we are in a 1 staff to 5 student ratio in our various community rotations. 33 of our 35 students are participating actively in a community-based work rotation. Since the starting of the school year, we have 14 students that have now moved into paid employment positions at a variety of local businesses. We have 1 student that is participating at Project Search at Waukesha Memorial Hospital, and that's been going very well. And we have 1 student that just completed the FedEx package handler training and is moving towards a paid position at the FedEx plant. Oh, I just lost the TV. Oh, there we go. And those are some pictures of our students out in the community working. So we have our 1 young lady who was working at Hatfield Elementary. She's now moved into Experience Fitness, working in daycare. You'll see in our second image our students working at Restore, doing stocking, staging, cleaning, a variety of activities. The students in the third image are working at Hope Center. They're working in the cafeteria. They do cooking, cleaning, dishwashing, as well as on the second floor, they are working in the store, sorting clothing, putting it out, and helping customers. In the fourth image, you can see our students that are helping set up. They have been interning with our IT department. And then we have some other images at the bottom of Experience Fitness, including our students that have been working the front desk, greeting customers, checking them in, and helping insure. In addition to our work rotations, we really wanted to expand our modules that we had been offering around independent living for meal planning, community shopping, laundry, going out to eat, and again, with that focus of authentic experiences and engaging in the community. So what does that look like this year? This year, we have converted 2 classrooms into an apartment. We just got our stove, yay! So that way they have, when they're coming in, that feel for what it is to take care of a home. We also had participated in 15 community outings with a focus on independent living skills. Students meal plan, they are learning how to do their laundry, go to the laundromat, practicing those budgeting skills, how to clean a house, where do you get household cleaning supplies from, as well as practicing that self-care, health and hygiene. And that's just a few of the different activities that they've engaged in the community. We also wanted to focus on independent living for the community around recreation. For many of our young adults, they're not always engaging in community activities and exploring interests outside of the home. And so we wanted to show them what they could access in the community and again, build that independence in accessing those community activities. So what does that look like this year? This year we have participated in 13 community outings. Some of our outings have included visiting Fire Station Number 1 to learn about fire safety and being safe in our home, as well as fun outings. Buckner Park to learn how to play pickleball, the Milwaukee Zoo, Retzer, the Waukesha Public Library, and bowling outings. When our students are engaged in the independent living as well as our recreation activities, it's 100% participation. So all of our young adults are engaging and going into the community with us and accessing our go-to is the transit system. And I cannot say enough thanks to the bus. They have been phenomenal. They've done training with our students. They are accommodating. We have 35 students. We're typically traveling with 30 students on the transit system, and they have really been amazing. How does this benefit our young adults? They've really been working on that teamwork, communication, flexible thinking, being able to problem solve when they're in the community, as well as advocating for their needs. And these are just a few of the images of our students traveling to Variety, as well as accessing some independent living within our building. The other hope was that we would continue to build those community relationships with supports to increase engagement and understanding of our families and what services were available once they aged out. And so a few of the services that we were connecting with is DVR, ADRC, County Health and Human Services, day services, Special Olympics were just a few that we were hoping to connect with. This year we have also included, it wasn't something that was initially on our radar, but we have been offering monthly tours to our 3 high schools because that was a need expressed. So we have been expanding in including our high schools in some tours to help our high schools understand what employment is available for students. So we've offered Ingleside Hotel, Farm and Fleet, Generac. We also have been partnering with Independence First. They've been coming on Wednesdays and facilitating different lessons. Our first was on budgeting. They're going to be coming starting this week, Wednesday, to work on social skills. And then we're going to offer a third session as well. We've also closely partnered with the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. Previously, our young adults would maintain their DVR counselor from the high school that they were at. What we're finding is that sometimes communication, what you were working on, you had different counselors, different moving pieces, which was making it difficult. So now we have one DVR counselor, that's our point person. She's been actively working with our young adults to really engage and help parents understand what services are available and then moving them into employment, and paid employment when they're ready. And so that's really been a fantastic move for us. We also are continuing to connect with ADRC, Special Olympics, and other adult services. And again, those are things that we want to continue to grow in. And we're always building our resource site. So.
I'll just add that it's exciting to see what started out as what could be is in motion. Extremely positive feedback from parents, from students, and I think one parent put it pretty well when they said their gauge of experience or benefit is their energy level at the end of the week. AKA they're exhausted when they come home on a Friday. So if you recall, we set out to really improve outcomes for our students once they leave us, once we no longer have access to them. So what can we expose them to, teach them skill-wise so that when they leave us, they're more successful in their either college career, community, volunteer, or recreational types experiences. And when you link that back to what Laura and her team has done this year within the Transition Academy, it's exciting. It's exciting not only where they are now, but the possibilities are endless, right? So, thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to add, or are you good? Okay. Yeah, what questions would you have?
Questions? Anthony?
Yeah, I had a, kind of at the beginning of the presentation, before the question, I was just looking at some of the numbers. I mean, it looks like the participation level you have and the success rate that you're having is, you know, excellent. It looks, everyone in the program is doing well in the program.
Yeah.
I was curious, and it kind of was answered, there's a lot of community involvement. You had mentioned that prior to COVID, you had these community partners, and then after COVID, people came indoors. Were a lot of those relationships reestablished, or did you find new ones, or?
The only relationship that we've maintained is the Hope Center. The other relationships are newly foster relationships, so.
Very good.
It's very exciting, and we're seeking new, we're really looking to match student interests with community partners. And so as we look ahead to next year, we're also looking at what our students' area of interest and where can we push in and what other community partners can we reach out to help provide some opportunities.
Have you identified what some of those areas are that you have current student interest in, what you would like to?
Yeah, we have
And
actually
partners?
several students that are interested in restaurant and hospitality. So that's an area that we're looking at pushing into. We also have 2 students that are huge sports fans. And so looking at what could be a fit, where could be a match with that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Montiel?
Thank you. I remember the presentation from June, but if you would ask me if it was in June, I'd say no. It was about 2 months ago, so, thank you. And I know I asked you this last time, and I know we talked about it, and I know there's a chain of command and there's channels to do this, but, and I'm putting you in the spot, so I'm not looking for an answer today unless you're ready to scream one out. Is there something you need you're not getting? That's the hardest thing, sitting over here, seeing what you guys do and your colleagues do. I heard this saying once from a judge. If anybody's on the side of the angels, it's you and your colleagues. I mean, it's just such an important thing. IEPs, all the things that Dr. Cook has helped educate me about in the time on the board, we're not simply pushing these kids out on the streets. They're wraparound services, and I don't even know all the terminology. It's a tremendous example of, I think, the greatness of public education. We don't just educate our kids. It's this more hopeful, encompassing life skills, especially in Transition Academy. So if there is something that you're not getting, within reason, I don't know if you need a helicopter or something, but please reach out.
This is recorded, right?
This is being recorded.
Yes, of course. So just please let us know. I remember I asked it before, I never heard anything, so for me, it's a good sign, but there's always ways to improve, innovation. So excellent work. It's easy to spend 3 minutes to praise you guys when you spend all your doing this day in, day out. So I don't know how else to say it on behalf of the constituents and the students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Well, the change is fantastic. You guys did a fantastic job. What does the apartment look like? Do you have it fully furnished? What does the kitchen look like? I was at Whitewater, actually, not Whitewater, Watertown last Friday with our transition program. And they have an apartment, which is, it has a stove and dishwasher and laundry, and they have couches and, 2 refrigerators. Is that how ours is set up?
We're getting close.
Okay. I love the apartment
Yeah,
idea. It's
I know
fantastic.
we have a refrigerator coming, stove
Okay.
just got installed. We have a couch, we have 2 tables just because our group size is so
Yeah,
large.
right. Yeah, theirs is a little bit smaller.
And so we do have 2 dining tables.
Okay.
We have a couple of, like comfortable loungy chairs that are in there as well.
We do need to reconfigure, I would say, the sink and all of
Yeah.
that, because, it's a sink. and
Yep.
A sink for them to learn how to do dishes.
Right,
And get you a dishwasher.
yeah, that's,
That works.
that's clutch.
Things
That's
like that.
Right.
But it
Transition skill,
is
isn't it?
a work in progress.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
you've been phenomenal with the transition grant and helping us out that way, so working it.
Well, yeah, you're definitely putting it to work.
I think that's important to note. I mean,
Yeah.
Jason has written for and been awarded 3 of the last 3 transition grants from the state totaling about $25,000 grant.
North of 60,000.
Yeah, we bought a van with it, didn't we?
60,000 or
Didn't
so,
we buy the van
yeah.
with 2 vans?
So we've, through that extra work and that
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
extra funding, we have been able to make some additions
Yeah.
that otherwise wouldn't have been possible.
Okay. Are you guys visiting the colleges? Like, I know Shepherd's College has a program after the transition, and Whitewater and Concordia. Have you visited those?
We
Is-
haven't. We
okay.
have shared information with families, but no, I have not.
Okay,
visited
because
them.
they do tours.
Yes.
I've been to all 3 of those, and the tours are fantastic. It's really great to see the kids, the students move forward on that. That's awesome. Well, the changes are fantastic. I love hearing about them.
Thank you.
The right people are obviously
Oh, yeah, this.
in charge of it,
Share
so.
some swag with you guys. Should I pass it around? I have to brag about what our kids are making.
Yeah, for sure.
So in here, there is lip balm, candles, and soap. Help yourself.
It's open in the morning. When is the coffee shop open? Is that like, is that a whole,
In the mornings?
yeah, that's what I thought.
What time?
In the mornings at 8 o'clock,
Okay.
and we have staff down there until about 9:30. And then this is one of the examples of the mugs that our students made for school grounds.
Mm-hmm.
And then our other one, again, the business, the name and the logo was designed by our students. This was another T-shirt that was designed by our young adults. And then this year, our students came up with our school animal.
Candle.
And so we have
Infuse the
WTA,
candle.
which is See Your True Capabilities, and they have a whale. And the reason that they picked the whale was because one of our young adults said that so often we look at a whale and we think that it's stupid and that it's not intelligent. And when people look at us, they think that we're stupid and we're not intelligent. And we want to show them our true ability. And so that's why they came up with the whale.
That's great.
They did that on their own?
Yep, they did that on their
No
own.
kidding. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Are you
It was
guys,
smart.
are you working with the Y?
We are hoping to partner with the Y. We have been talking to them.
Okay,
Right now, because we have been so closely tied to Experience Fitness.
Yep.
It's just a matter of we don't have enough students and
Oh,
have
okay.
to be able to go there. And Experience has just been such a phenomenal
well, yeah, you have
partnership.
to, yeah.
Because
for
we
sure.
can work the front desk, we can work all the equipment, we can access the daycare.
Yep,
They have been just a tremendous partner to
yeah,
us.
for sure. That's
So,
great. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
It's been really a phenomenal opportunity.
Yes. They take orders.
Yes. So if you want any swag, custom designs, please reach out to us.
Just a little, like a little dressier, they have those too. So, yeah, they have a lot.
That's fantastic.
I'm going to smell like a flower. Very nice.
Yep, that's great. I love it. Alrighty, any other questions? Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great work.
There you go, rock star.
Oh, don't steal the cups. Alrighty, next up, Project Search.
Project Search.
Another project I
So
love.
Jason and Maureen will be here, are here to discuss Project Search. This was an opportunity that was presented to us last summer. And Jason, Maureen, and others have just taken this opportunity and run with it. So
Yep.
turn it over to them and let you ask questions at the end.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome.
And thanks for having us again. Project Search is not something that we have formally brought to your attention for presentation. It's something that I have written about in several Friday board updates, several different months since really last spring, when an individual from CEO came to us and asked if we would be interested in serving as the educational partner for a Project Search location at Waukesha Memorial Hospital. It's a partner or a location for Project Search that existed prior to COVID, and then unfortunately closed throughout that time, and they wanted to get it back up and running, and we're searching for that educational partner, which is where we come in. So through some discussions and really thinking about where we wanted our transition academy to go, and perhaps the next step thereafter, it did make sense for us to pull our seat up to the table and listen as to what they had to say and how it could benefit our students, including students from other area school districts. Maureen Mancuso is with us today. She, in her prior life, was a special education teacher with us at South High School, and expressed interest in this position, and has done a phenomenal job within it so far this school year in its first semester. So she is here with us tonight to tell you everything you wanted to know about Project Search, and most importantly, what it's meant for some of our students and students from other districts so far this school year. So, Maureen.
All right. So just kind of starting with what is Project Search, if you're not familiar with the program. It's a 36-week unpaid on-the-job training program that takes place at a host site. So obviously our host site is Waukesha Memorial Hospital. The other closest ones, there's one at Freighter that started running again this year. They're bringing back Children's next year. And there's one at the zoo, if you've heard of that one before. And then Watertown has one as well. They've moved it from the hospital to a different location. So this particular program runs at the same time as the school year. So the calendar is really close to the school year calendar. Each intern receives daily instruction in our skills training room. In addition, so they get soft skills training as well as the training that they're getting on the job in their different internships. So they each participate in 3 different 10-week long rotations throughout the year. So they are just starting, they're in their second week of their second rotation right now. And the goal of Project Search is that these interns will obtain competitive employment in an integrated setting at least 16 hours a week or more upon completion of this program. So we have had a couple interns that were already offered positions at the hospital, 2 after their first rotation. It's not an expectation that the hospital offers the interns a position, but a lot of the areas in the hospital are in need. They're short-staffed, they're understaffed, so our interns have been lucky in the respect that if they have done a really nice job in their rotation, 2 of them have been offered a job that if they decide at the end of their 3rd rotation that they would like to continue working at Waukesha Memorial, that there's a job there for them. We started with 8 interns this school year. Our goal for next school year would be between 12 and 15 interns. Of the 8 interns we have this year, 5 were former graduates of the Waukesha School District. So I feel some of them participated in the Transition Academy, some of them did not. I feel like they were kind of the forgotten group of young adults because they hit that the time of COVID. So where they would have maybe had more success having job experiences or different experiences with DVR to obtain employment, they were not able to have those just because of everything being so shut down. So kind of offered some of the students that did graduate from our school district kind of a second chance at doing something like this. So just what is the basic entrance criteria for a student to enter Project Search. So if they are of high school age, they do have to have already completed their high school credits or their high school programming. they have to agree that Project Search is their last year of school, so their last year of special education eligibility. So some students, like I said before, have done a couple years. They could do, if it's more appropriate, to go to the Transition Academy first, and then in their final year, complete Project Search. Because once they've finished Project Search in their final year, the goal is employment, and so then they would age out. And they would not receive any more services after that. We also do have some young adults, obviously, that are not of school age anymore that have graduated and aged out this year. I think some of the important things are just that they're at a place where they can accept feedback and change behavior with teaching from myself or the skills trainers that work with me. A big thing at the hospital is that they're able to follow the stricter policies, procedures, and guidelines of our host business. We have completed some travel training. Most of our students are transported this year just by family members, or they have a transportation service. But we did do some travel training over our transition week, which is just a week we have in between their internships. And I will say, go off of what Laura Edwards shared, is that the public transportation system in the city is great. I really had almost no experience using it except for last year at South with some individuals, but they are super great about helping train the students and teach them how to use public transportation. They also have to be committed, like I mentioned before, to working in the community at least 16 hours a week or more at the end of the program. If they are not going to accept a position at the hospital, our skills trainers, one of them specifically is hired as a job developer. So she has already started job developing for those students that we don't think the hospital would be the best fit once they complete their experience this year. So what does a typical day look like for our interns? They're at the internship site Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 2:30. They start their day off in our skills training classroom, and that's where we cover different soft skills such as teamwork, problem solving, how to accept constructive criticism on the job, money management skills, different employment exploration, building resumes, interviewing. They go out to their rotations then from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. They all have a half-hour lunch break, and then they work again from 12 to 2. They return to our skills training classroom to do some journaling and reflecting on the day. Or if we need to go over anything that has happened throughout the day that we need to address, we do that at that time as well. So some of the examples of the rotations that we've had so far this year. The cardiac rehabilitation clinic, GI services, cafe and food services, environmental services, behavioral health, inpatient and the retail pharmacy, supply chain and distribution, the neurosciences clinic, day surgery, and then occupational and physical therapy. Like Jason had mentioned, it's a collaboration. So we have two site partners at Waukesha Memorial Hospital that are kind of go-to people there when we need things from them. I am the instructor provided by the school district, and then we partner with Transcend or CEO, and that's where we have our two skills trainers that work with me on a daily basis, Jennifer Elkhorn and Lissa Rabel. And then Taryn Cole also works for that agency as the project search liaison. So like I mentioned, the interns have just started their second rotation. I had mentioned during transition week, they learned how to use the Waukesha transit system, went bowling and out to lunch. We also learned about healthy eating and cooked breakfast together. And then just looking for the next round of interns for next year, just some important dates. We have some information sessions scheduled for parents. And then the application is out and has been sent to the schools, other school districts, as well as agencies that work with young adults with disabilities. So we have an upcoming application deadline, February 24th. Skills Assessment Day, once the students have applied and gone through an interview process with their parents, then they come for a Skill Assessments Day, and they just do some different various assessment on their skills, similar to different rotations that they might do at the hospital, just to see if they would be a good fit, and this would be something that they could be successful at.
As I mentioned in the beginning, last year when this partnership formed, it was fairly late in the school year. And the CEO and us as a district were somewhat scrambling to make sure we got the word out to have enough interest to go through skills assessments and selections. This year, it went out last week. So the hope of 12 to 15 interns is, I think, a good reality for this school year. It'd be great to offer this experience to obviously more of our own students, including those from neighboring school districts. So 2 informational sessions, as you see before you next week, one during the school day that's virtual, one in the evening. Next Thursday, actually right across the hall here in 109. So hopefully this information has been sent out to all of our department chairs within our high schools, along with many of our neighboring school districts' directors, with hope of spreading the word so that we can, answer the questions that the parents might have, whose son or daughter may be interested in this for the following year. So excited about the timeline and the process and where it goes.
Any comments? Go ahead. Anthony?
Thank you. I just had one question. You said there was 8 in the program, and there was participation from outside the district. Excuse me, what is that breakdown? How many students do we have, or adults do we have coming in from outside and within our own district?
So 5 were graduates from the Waukesha School District. 1 actually is finishing their last year. He would have been a WTA student, and we thought this would be a better fit for him. And then we have a student that graduated from Elmbrook School District, 1 from New Berlin, and then a current student that's finishing his last year of eligibility from Maguanago School District.
Okay.
We did have a few other applicants, or those who had expressed interest that are currently our students, but due to some of the regulations set forth by the hospital, they were no longer willing to participate. So again, I'm pretty confident we'll have higher interest within our own students and young adults as we enter into this spring application process.
Corey?
Yeah, thank you. It sounds like a great program. I did notice from the previous presentation, they have 1 person from the Transition Academy. How does that work? Not specific. If they're in, I'm confused. So if their weekday is 8 to 2, how are they still involved in the Transition Academy? I don't want to speak about that particular student.
And without speaking
Maybe I
about
should
what
ask.
Laura meant, I believe there was 1 young adult who started the school year in the Transition Academy.
I continue to case manage.
Okay,
And he's participating at the hospital.
Gotcha.
So all the paperwork, talk with the family, connect with any resources that they might have as
Okay.
he ages out and turns 21. So as his case manager, I'm continuing connecting with those community pieces, as well
Excellent.
as collaborating with Maureen.
excellent. And then that'll be last year about,
Correct.
got it. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Fantastic program.
Any other questions? Do we have any in the program that are out of the transition program? So where I work, they go after they leave our program. And it's Watertown, because it's, out there. So are we going to promote that, where you're going to go through the transition program? Because, the transition program, a lot of soft skills you'll learn. And are we going to promote that where they're out of the transition program and then they hit Project Search?
We promote the continuum of options that we have,
Okay.
right? And for some students, it makes complete sense to go through and exhaust the resources before going outside. For some, it's also about funding and
Yep.
where do they choose to access that and at what point, right?
Right.
So it is fairly common for students to go through 1, 2, maybe 3 years of our Transition Academy and then go in. We also have some high school students who
Oh, okay.
graduate or finish their 4th year, and instead of going to the Transition Academy,
Go down there.
they believe that Project Search is a better fit, and
Okay.
that's the direction that they go.
Okay, excellent. I'm glad we jumped on this. This is a great program. I mean,
Absolutely.
I toured the zoos earlier this year. They had districts down there, and that's a great program too. We're hoping to get at least one of our kids in there, because it's an opportunity beyond belief for these students, for sure. Excellent. Anything else? Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty, next up is open enrollment and in-district school choice trends.
So there were some questions last week at the Finance and Facilities Committee about open enrollment. And then at that same meeting, some questions came up about school choice. So we have both options. Families can enroll in the school district through the school choice or the open enrollment process. We also then have an option for families who wish to go to a different school outside of their attendance area or to access a special program in Waukesha where they can go through school choice. So what I'm going to do is put up the table that I was trying to reference a week ago in the F&F committee. And up on the screen, you can see our trends. I'll make that bigger for my eyes. Make no assumption about yours. But what we did was we looked back over a 5-year period of time and wanted to present at F&F where we have been at as it pertains to open enrollment. So this is the formal state process that begins in February, closes in April, end of April, where we then enter that process and then reopens again in July with alternate applications for choice, so for open enrollment. And so what we did was we broke it down going back 5 years. So the first year you see up here is 2018-2019 school year, where in our district we brought in, so looking at Banting, during the 18-19 school year, 31 students open enrolled into Banting. So when you see that, we have 4K through 5 there. The number, Banting is 22, Bethesda is 9. So you can kind of see how that comes through. What we did at the end of it was we broke out eAchieve. I knew that was a question of the board. How much of this is choice into our brick and mortars versus choice into eAchieve? And so at the end of each school year, you can see where our totals were. So back in the 18-19 school year, we had 173 students open enroll in to the school district. I'm sure I shouldn't say open enroll in. We had 173 students open enrolling into the district at that time, into our brick and mortar schools, and 956 into eAchieve at that time. The reason why I make that distinction is from year to year, some of these kids are counted twice, because kids who are here in 18-19, for instance, as a 5th grader, then would be here in 19-20 as a 6th grader. So some of those numbers, they duplicate, or they're counted twice year by year. In the 19-20 school year, you can see that we had 202 students open enrolling in for face-to-face, 969 for eAchieve, and then 1,171 total. In 2021, we had 229 students open enrolling into our brick and mortar, 1,241. Important note about the 2021 school year is this is when you started to see COVID became a factor for us. This was where you start to see, like, for instance, eAchieve's enrollment peaking. And again, these are just the open enrolled in. So what I want you to understand is we have Waukesha students who elect to go to eAchieve full-time. Those numbers are not in here because they're Waukesha kids, they can access the program. So that 1241 only represents the open enrolled in kids to eAchieve. All right, just so you know that's not the total enrollment during that year. During the 21-22 school year, eAchieve continued to see, an increased level of enrollment, primarily due to some of the COVID, but you'll also see the school district of Waukesha's brick and mortar open enrollment goes up during that year. So you can see that we are at 1447 total. And then this year, you can see that our brick and mortar open enrollment number is at 325. So you've seen steady growth in that category over a 5-year period of time. eAchieve's open enrollment number has gone down. We believe at this time that that is starting to right size to like pre-pandemic levels. Not that it's a less popular program, it's just we believe it's less needed around the state as things have transitioned beyond COVID. And so you can see that our total number of kids who come into the district under open enrollment is 1,112 for this school year. So that number, brick and mortar plus e-achieve equals that particular number. The next chart that I will show you shows where our students are open enrolling out to. This is, again, these kids are counted twice. So it's not 19 plus 20 plus 21. Some of the kids who are in the 19 count are also in the 20 count, are also in the 21 count. But you can see that over a 5-year period of time, and the reason why we put this grand total on here is this is kind of over 5 years, that number attaches to the number of kids, and when we look at this internally, then there's a funding component that's associated with that, because that's the amount of money that's transferring out over that period of time. But year by year by year, so KM, using that as an example, they are gaining in the 2023 number 230 kids from us. Of that 230, that may be 217 plus 13 new kids, or any combination of, but those 217, there's a lot of those 217 kids from last year that are factoring into this 230 this year. So just want to make sure that that's very clear for anybody looking at this chart, that right now we are not losing 1,053 kids to Kettle Moraine. Yes, Mr. Martinez.
I'm sorry, I missed it. Explain to me again why that is again.
So
They're counted twice.
if I'm in 4th grade in 2019 and my family open enrolled me out to KM, they kept me there in 5th grade, which is 2020. They kept me there in 6th grade, which is 21. They kept me there in 7th grade, which is 2022, and then in 8th grade, which is 2023. So I myself am represented in the 19 number, the 20 number, 21, 22, 23. Okay, so those kids are counted over years, but what we wanted to do was to capture each year what that total number of kids were to the receiving district. So similarly, Pewaukee, we did this in rank order just by the, kind of the totals as to the highest districts where we're sending kids. Pewaukee, you can see 177, 169, 69, 60, 73. Mugwanago has gone up a few students over time. Elmbrook is closed to open enrollment, so you can see that their number has gone down over time. Some of the numbers that we're looking at and we're doing some planning around, you'll see the McFarland School District, they offer a virtual academy. We have our own virtual school, so we want to take a look as to why kids are selecting McFarland over Waukesha. Grantsburg is another one that has their own virtual academy, as does Northern Ozaki. So we have brick and mortar transfer out, but we also have virtual transferring out, and those are some numbers that we're taking a look at. I think one of the things that I'd like to point out to you, I talked about it a little bit at F&F. If you go from line 3 over the last several years, this is where we're getting kids from. And this is something that eAchieve does contribute a lot to this, but this gives you a little bit of a snapshot on how widespread virtual enrollment is. And then when you ask the question, why would we potentially be losing kids to a virtual school elsewhere? We have 300, and hold on one second here. We had 306 school districts, if I counted that right, the columns there, or the rows there. 306 school districts we've received kids from. Now, that may not be every single year. Like as you look down there, Yorkville didn't send us any in 23. But we've had students in the last 5 years from 306 of the 410-ish, 20-ish school districts in the state of Wisconsin receive their education here. And I think that that's important perspective, because sometimes we get into that discussion around eAchieve and why our enrollment numbers where they're at. Well, if I were looking at the Northern Ozaki numbers and the numbers from McFarland, you probably would see a similar pattern of receiving students from around the state. So again, stuff that we dig into and stuff that we look at, but you can kind of see where the kids have come from every single year. So before I get to choice, in-district choice, and I do have some open enrollment numbers in our this year's in-district choice. Are there any questions on open enrollment, either in or out?
Go ahead.
There's a chart here, and you may go over school choice by attendance area.
That'll be next. I want to do the open enrollment first before I have to toggle between screens.
Awesome. So we're losing 200 students to Kettle, 230 students to Kettle Moraine.
Right.
Why do we have the grand total column? What is
The
that?
grand total is helping us,
It says something.
well, it tells us that over the course of 5 years, that's an enrollment, like, when we look internally, like, for whatever financial impact that that's had.
Okay.
You know, we've lost 1,053 kids in that 5-year period of time to Kettle Moraine. And it helps us a little bit with the trends. So as we look at year by year by year, using like Elmbrook right now is pretty high on this table in comparison to all of the school districts that we have lost kids to. But they're trending downwards. And so what we want to do, look at historically over time, is where does that 179 come in? Because open enrollment is closed there.
Yep.
How quickly does it fade out that they no longer have an SDW kid there, for example?
Okay.
Similarly, where does, like McGuanago, which now is in the third position,
Yep.
like, what do they do over time? Or what does Milwaukee do over time? So that number, that grand total number, really, it's an internal thing
Okay.
for us,
I
just
gotcha.
as a monitoring thing, but it represents funding in that last 5 years.
Right. Okay.
So it's not a total, but it gives us something to work off of
It
it.
almost seems like kid years, not kids. I mean.
It's
because-
FTEs, it's FTE.
It does, it's that open enroll transfer
Right.
out. So if you get $10,000 per kid,
Yeah.
$8,000 follows the kid.
Right.
So over a 5-year period of time, that 1,050 times 8,000, that's part of that open enroll transfer
Right.
out at the end of the year.
Right.
That money then would be going to KM
Yeah.
at 80% the rate that you would get for a resident student.
Okay. All righty. All right, any other questions?
I had a quick question. You had brought up the other programs that have virtual, like Grantsburg and what have you. I mean, how big are those programs? I'm assuming they're not as big as ours, but with virtual, I mean, what type of capacity?
McFarland,
And-
Northern Ozaki, Grantsburg are similar in size to eAchieve. We had the numbers from a few years back. eAchieve Academy, the Wisconsin Virtual Academy out of McFarland, and a couple of others, they were all the highest, and then there was a substantial drop. Now, we haven't run that virtual enrollment rate statewide in a while. We haven't looked at that number, but a few years back, prior to the pandemic, when we were looking at that from a marketing standpoint, we started to see that, eAchieve was clustered with about 3 or 4 other schools, and then there was a substantial drop after that. From an enrollment standpoint, eAchieve has been very competitive in the top half, or in the top tier of that. They've also done very well from the academic performance. For those of you who are on the board back on TNL, they did some presentations on like where their ACT score fell, and their ACT score was often the number 1 or 2 among the virtual schools, which we were very proud of at the time.
So we have the same number of students roughly in each of those that offer that offer a virtual platform, you're saying, or even though we're a much larger district, which really has little to do with the fact that this is all
Correct.
virtual.
For instance, Northern Ozaki, there was one time where Northern Ozaki had as many kids, about 700, enrolled in their virtual school as they had in their brick and mortar school district. So that, perspective-wise, it's, a lot of this is how long have you offered the program? Out of McFarland, I believe that was one of the first in the state. So they have the long history. Northern Ozaki was one of the first in the state. eAchieve was one of the first in the state. So from a legacy standpoint, you've seen higher enrollments in those. The startups start to get some traction, but those other ones have, a kind of word of mouth reputation, plus a longer academic record that people can take a look at, and then much more history with success stories as to when things have worked.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Our special guest, Carrie.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Cook, thank you for this data. I'm really appreciative of it. I think it gives us a really good light into what is going on. But more importantly, it is starting the foundation of our budget cycle. Part of the pieces that I want to take a look at is understanding what the brick and mortar count is and understanding what the e-achieve is, because the costs of support differ, right? So the infrastructure, the staffing, and all of that pieces. But additionally, taking a look at those that are in district, the next level to look at is really understanding even a lot of what we heard about tonight, which is talking about the IEPs, the special programs that we're offering, making sure that when we talk about meeting each student where we're needing, that we're also funding appropriately, whether that is through student enrollment or whether that is through grants. And that's the part that I'm asking for the next section for student services as we look at that. And I think Mr. Montillo tapped that a little bit earlier. We're asking, what do you need, right? Because a lot of the discussions that we're learning on is that as much as we are asking our government and our state to provide us more, we're not getting it. So then the challenge is, what do we need to effectively run it? Being real about that, understanding what do we have for enrollment, and building the budget upwards versus rolling everything in for all enrollment into one number without fully effectively understanding the costs are different when we're dealing with project search, when we're dealing with the transition, when we're dealing with these IEP plans. That's the part that I'm really engaged in, where this data has begun to give us that shell and keep going to drill that down. So my ask is going to be for the next meeting, can we get a collaborative starting shell from student services on all of the components of our students that we need to manage? How do you align aids and all of that? And I know what your answer is going to be, because it's a daunting piece, and I know the cost, but we have to start asking so that we line that up.
Absolutely. I would just see if the committee could meet at 5. Because when you start to get into the components, and I appreciate you asking for those, I think that they're very important for us to discuss. It does get very in-depth, and we certainly can map out all of the things that we need to provide. As you asked me the question about, special ed funding and reimbursement and stuff, again, I go back to what the state's obligation is, or what they provide us now, and what they provided school districts approximately 25, 30 years ago in categorical reimbursement. 25, 30 years ago, it was between 65 and 70% categorical reimbursement. So if we spent $10 million, we would get reimbursed by the state somewhere between $6.5 and $7 million. That currently sits at about 28%. So right now, if we spend 10 million, we get 2.8 back from the state. And that number has been whittled down, regardless of whoever's been in Madison, over the last 25, 30 years. So that number has gone down, and they've never gotten back to what their level of funding should be for special education in schools. What happens with that number is then the local funds, the general fund 10, the overall district budget, at the end of the year, you do a big transfer, and then that transfer has crept up in Waukesha over time because that state obligation has gone down. And then that's the part where we start to get in the pinch, because the things that we'll talk to you about in March are the things that we are mandated to provide. When we start talking about those 18 to 21-year-old services, we do a really good job of providing those. But we're required to provide services for 18 to 21-year-olds. And given our size, we're very fortunate that we can have a program like we have. When we start talking about related services, speech and language, OT, PT, we're required to provide that. And that, absent the obligation that the state has to us, which they're not meeting, that is the part where we start to see this funding issue in and around special education. So happy to do it. It's going to take us some time, and I'll work with Mr. McCaffrey kind of on that sketch and that outline, and we can continue that conversation April, May, whatever it might be, until you all have your questions answered.
No, I appreciate that. And to that point, the fact that we're not getting adequate reimbursement doesn't remove our obligation to support these kids.
Correct.
So,
we meet that obligation every year. The board has always met that obligation. But that does contribute then to the larger budget discussion. If you had the categorical reimbursement, then you would not be pushing that conversation up against the general program that you would be providing to all the students.
And I agree, and I think that the point in, taking a look at this is saying if we build this and take a full view from the bottom up and start challenging other areas where we do need to cut, it shouldn't be our students.
Yep.
And that's where I'm pushing on, and I know that this has been a discussion and it's been met, but when I hear that we need more aides, when I start to hear that we're seeing more and more students that are needing additional support, and that number looks to keep growing, these are real costs, and we have to find a way to do that, and other areas outside of supporting our students are going to have to find that means. But a real discussion so that we know what that number is good for us to have.
Happy to have it.
I appreciate the work.
So the next chart, if there's no more questions on OE, the next table that I'm going to provide you, and I think that this gets to kind of what that next level of questioning was. These tables are broken out by school and then by attendance area. So right now, as of this school year, Banting has 432 students attending school there. So the Banting area does not represent 432 students. So when you see Banting underneath, the number represented in Banting, that 247, that is 247 kids that live in the Banting attendance area that attend school at Banting Elementary. Okay? Bethesda, 4 students from Bethesda elect to go to Banting. Leave Banting to go to Bethesda. I want to make sure that I'm clear on that. Leave Banting to go to Bethesda. 1 student goes to E-Achieve, 2 to Hadfield, 5 to Hawthorne, 12 to Hillcrest, 6 to Lowell, 1 to Meadowbrook. This, with the other chart, you can see the 35 students in the Banting attendance area open enroll out of the district. The other number that really is substantial here that we pay attention to is which students are in private, parochial, or homeschooling. And those kids are housed in we have kind of a fake school, if you will. It's the SDW census. It's a holding place. So for all of the pupils that live in the school district of Waukesha, regardless if they go to school here or not, we have them in that number. And so you'll see that number is 80 students. We have 21 elect to go to STEM. And then some of them are coded to the Montessori School of Waukesha. When you see White Rock School next to that, we have the Montessori kids are coded to White Rock for attendance purposes, just so we're clear. So the total Banting attendance area students are 424. And so of that 424, 247 of those kids who live in the attendance area go to Banting.
And what's the 432 then?
Well, the 432 is the enrollment of the school. So that's with kids who are coming in from other areas.
Okay. Thank you.
So in that, Banting is a dual language site, so you would see a large number of students going to Banting based off of their a service area for the dual language.
Thank you.
And you can see when we get down into the others, what we wanted to do was capture physical locations, and this is more of an internal discussion as we start looking at who's accessing choice. We broke it out by kids attending STEM and then kids attending Hillcrest, and we did do that based off of demographics because that does inform some of our other trends. For instance, kids who are accessing dual language and things like that, so we need to monitor that. I can go school by school. You can see Bethesda, total school enrollment of 381. 236 of those 381 live in the Bethesda attendance area. Again, you can see the census holding school is pretty high there. As we go through this, though, I'd ask you to geographically kind of place these schools.
Right.
Banting is on the north end of our school district, right? They see not a lot, but they see a number of kids open and rolling out. Bethesda is more landlocked within the city of Waukesha. You see 4 kids open and rolling out. So when you start to ask the question, which kids are going out, you'll begin to see that there's the boundaries. Hadfield, you can see some large numbers in Hadfield, and I'll explain that a little bit here. Hadfield has a large attendance area. Within that attendance area, a lot of kids access the dual language program. So when you see 92 kids from the Hadfield attendance area going to Banting, a large percentage of those kids would be kids who are in the dual language program. Higher, again, dual language school. A lot of kids who lived in the Whittier, former Whittier attendance area went to Higher for their dual language services. So you see 145 kids at Higher from this attendance area. That's because they were involved in the dual language program when it was the Whittier attendance area. The SDW census, both the Catholic and Lutheran schools in town have their footprint in these neighborhoods. So we see a lot of students accessing private education there. STEM, if you go back in our history, when STEM was formed, the Randall attendance area and the Saratoga attendance area, parts of those, all of the Saratoga attendance area was folded into Whittier, and part of the Randall attendance area was folded into Hadfield, if my memory serves me correctly. So you see a large number of kids who just by footprint and access began to access STEM. It's important to note that the total Hadfield attendance area is 1,119 students. And we currently have 332 students attending Hadfield. So within this attendance area, and before when it was Hadfield and Whittier, there was a tremendous amount of choice accessed in these either two attendance areas or this one attendance area for as far back as our records would show. This was a high area of choice. And I looked to Mr. McCaffrey as to how long choice has been around. Everybody that I've talked to said choice has been around as long as they can remember. So in-district school choice in Waukesha is a decades-old opportunity that we've provided our families.
I mean, my sister was choice to Randall from Saratoga. So that's 30, I don't want to say 40 some years. We've had choice, some level of choice. Yeah, she's that old.
I'm not going to get into the age.
But, so it's been around a long time in Waukesha. We have always offered something where you could go to a different school if it met a certain need. Yep.
So at Hawthorne, 312 total students there, 155 of them come from the attendance area. From an open and rolled out standpoint, we don't see a lot of kids at Hawthorne. It's a little bit more of a landlocked school. We do see a number of kids accessing private education in this one, but we have a lot of students come into Hawthorne for the dual language program. So again, based off of where the service areas are provided, Hawthorne is one. Higher, 357 students, 158 are attendance area students. The total attendance area is 338. This again, if you go back to the Hadfield slide, you can see where a lot of kids come in, and that's particular to the dual language program. Hillcrest is one of our perimeter schools, 266 total students attending there this year, 212 from the attendance area, so a lot of kids in the attendance area go to school there. We have some kids transferring over from Banting. Banting is in near proximity to Hillcrest. We do see a large number of families who have selected private parochial or homeschooling in that area, a few that have accessed STEM. But again, not many kids, especially given that that's a boundary, not many are open and rolling out. So, we're very, very happy with, the retention that we see in that neighborhood. Lowell, 332 kids, 280 from the attendance area. This was one of the attendance areas that absorbed students when we combined Blair, Lowell, and Hawthorne a few years ago. We're actually very grateful for the enrollment that we have at Lowell, because for a time there, we weren't breaking 250 kids. It's a very large school, very, wonderful campus. So to see us in the 300s, that's a good, stable number for an elementary school there. In this, we see, again, a handful of families, or a large number of families have elected private parochial or homeschool. We do have a handful that have opened and rolled out, the 26, and then some that have made choices elsewhere. You'll see 75 kids from this attendance area at Hawthorne. A large number of those kids would be due to the dual language opportunity that's at Hawthorne. And then we have some families because it butts up against the Meadowbrook attendance area that select Meadowbrook. Meadowbrook has 239 this year, 152 from the attendance area. We see, again, this is one of our perimeter schools. We see that 48 families have opened and rolled out, and we have 70 of them at the private parochial or homeschool location. And then total, we have 299 kids living in that attendance area. So from what we have from an enrollment standpoint to what we have actually living there, we have a pretty good percentage of the kids who are attending Meadowbrook, which is encouraging for us. Prairie, 303 kids, 259 from the attendance area. Fair number in private and parochial from that. Fair number at STEM. Some go to Rose Glen. Again, because it's more landlocked, I tend to see one of the reasons why we have fewer kids open enrolling out of there. The geography does play a big impact on our OE out, as any larger, more expansive school district like ours would see. 512 kids at Rose Glen, 427 from the attendance area. We see a fair number going to private and parochial. For a perimeter school, for a boundary school, only having 28 kids open and rolling out. We're very happy with the retention that we see. Families indicate that they're happy at school there. We do see 610 total kids in the attendance area, so 512 of 610. Happy with that. Summit View. Summit View is a magnet school, so we do get a lot of choice. We've had a lot of choice but it's also an attendance area school. So between the magnet status and the attendance area status, we currently have 436 kids there. We do see a fair amount open and rolled out. And those are kids that we're losing. Those are the kids that are actually out of the district. You may see some kids that are going to other schools, but that 57 number going out, that's a number that we talk about a little bit because that Summit View is more of a landlocked school in the district. So we have some follow-up conversations on that. We have a high number of students that go private parochial and homeschool there. And we have 625 in the attendance area. So that's an area where of the attendance area kids, we lose about 200 of them to other choices, either within the district or outside of the district. All of the kids in our district go through a bit of a funneling process, then coming to the middle school. So you see at the middle level, all of the numbers will appear higher because you're gathering 3, 4, 5 elementary schools into each one of the middle schools. So Butler has an attendance area. For many years, it was closed. We didn't allow choice in because of the size of the building and the footprint in the attendance area. A handful of years ago, maybe just prior to COVID, we opened that up for choice again, or maybe it was just as the referendum completed. And so you can see that we currently have 1134 who live in the attendance area. We have 813 at Butler. But this, again, where those elementary numbers start to add up, you see 163 of them are in private parochial or homeschool, and then you see those open enrollment numbers start to add up at 95. And again, the STEM middle school does have an impact across all of our middle locations from an enrollment standpoint. It's a positive program, just that has an enrollment impact on the face-to-face. Horning's total school enrollment right now is at 624. There are 1,000 kids in the attendance area. You can see a high number of students are going to private parochial there, and then they do have a large portion of the STEM population from the Horning attendance area. Les Paul, 579. Total attendance area of 746. And again, 103 of those kids go to STEM. And then 89 into the private and parochial. And then our high schools, I know we had some questions about like high school transfers. We talked about that a little bit. In the North attendance area, we have 1,406 total students. North's enrollment is 1,009. 899 kids come from the attendance area, so just shy of 900. We do have families that are electing to open and roll out. North has one of the most, I would say, expansive northern boundaries. There's a couple subdivisions on the north end that are north attendance area where you'll see buses from Pewaukee and Elmbrook that all have portions of those subdivisions. And from a proximity standpoint, we've heard that families have elected those districts because you can, it's a stone's throw away from one high school and a 10-minute drive to others. But then again, you can see where kids this year have choiced out to the Academy of Health Professionals, the Engineering Prep Academy, South High School. So if you add all those together, you have 70-some students, maybe 80 students at South building from the north attendance area, and then 80 kids have elected to go to West along the way. South, we have teased out the academies from this number. So I want you to know that
Wow.
South has a lot more kids than 882 in their building. This is just like the legacy South High
Right.
School minus the academies. So 1,368 kids live in the attendance area. 760 of them go to South. And then you can see, again, we have some at the private school. South and CMH are near proximity. As you could see, the feeder schools to South had a large parochial enrollment. It kind of trends up through the high school. 104 kids from the South attendance area elect to go to West. Those boundaries do meet, the South attendance boundary and the West attendance boundary. But then you can see kids from South, 93 of them are attending the Academy of Health Professionals. 81 are at the Engineering Prep. So you can see again where some of these larger numbers of kids are ending up. Many of them are selecting just the program inside of South High School. Then West High School, they have 1190 this year. 75 open and enroll out. Again, this does have a boundary that pushes up against KM. The Census Holding School, the private parochial, there's a large number in the West attendance area who are accessing private education. You can see 51, 24, and 30, so about 105 kids are over at South from the north attendance, or from the West attendance area. And I think those are all of our schools, minus the academies, which they're choice-based and they're smaller numbers, and you can see them represented throughout. So I'm happy to answer any questions on where we're at from our school choice process. We don't have next year's completely done yet. We are processing the secondary numbers due to scheduling and staffing. Elementary families are getting their notices, but we're just not as far along in the process because scheduling and staffing is different at the elementary than it is at the secondary.
Questions on that bit of data? That's a lot. It's eye-opening.
We'll share this with you afterwards. Give me a couple days to get it to you, but you'll be able to see what we're looking at. We've used similar charts going back to when we had the Blair, Lowell, and Hawthorne attendance area discussion, as well as the Hadfield and Whittier attendance area. So we've kept these tables for a while, but this is kind of the first school-by-school review we've done with the committee.
Question, so knowing that there's good reason for students to go to a different school within our district, is there a percentage that the district would like to see of students in that school from that area?
You know, it would be nice if everybody liked their attendance area to school. We offer programs at all of our schools. So, you know, with Summit View being a magnet school for the arts, if families want to elect that type of experience for their kid, you know, we'll see that the kids go there. We offer the STEM. And so just kind of based off of where you live, you are able to get your kids to school. So I wouldn't lock us in to say, like, if we could keep 75% of the kids in the attendance area, because we've developed ourselves over many, many years as a place that offers a variety of choices to families. And through those choices, then we've been able to better meet our needs and you know, not, and do our best to keep kids within our boundaries instead of electing to go elsewhere. Also with dual language, which is, you know, a phenomenal program within our district, provides kids a great opportunity. We are dissecting the district a little bit differently. at the elementary level, where we're creating attendance areas where if you live in those attendance areas and you want dual, you're going to go to that school. So you're going to automatically pull kids from other schools out. So we can't necessarily put our finger on an exact percentage. But when we start to look at the number that is very encouraging to me, it's this number here on the OE in and out. When we have, over a 5-year period of time, seen growth in this number here, where more and more kids are starting to access us for brick and mortar experiences, that's a positive sign for the school district of Waukesha. That number is double from where it was 5 years ago. So that means that we've attracted kids in, we've maintained them, and then we've attracted more in to our opportunities. I think that's a good metric for us to keep our eye on.
And maybe just maybe a better way to look at it would be the percentage of kids in that area going outside the district.
Right.
Versus going to another school within the district, because that doesn't matter as much. Does that make sense?
Yep. In this, like right here in this table, if we can go 23, 24, 25, so on and so forth, and we can see these numbers, school district by school district, start to go down over time, we know then that we are retaining kids into our district offerings.
But I think that the challenge, what's the total on the bottom?
This one here.
Okay, so while we are gaining, and I agree that there's positive movement of people that are enrolling in, we are still at a net loss between the two of overall brick and mortar enrollment out.
Right.
And so when I take a look at where we're at as a district and what goals we should be having, it's building the district of excellence, right? People don't want to enroll out. They want to stay here. This is great families, great areas, great schools. I don't want to say it's a marketing slogan, but focus really is we want them to stay.
Right.
I love the growth on the in, but we still have challenges. Location, the district boundaries are a challenge for how weird our district is that doesn't support us, but still something for us not to address, saying that we still have some work to do to keep people here.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Montiel?
My iPad died, but the information, particularly broken out by school, is fascinating, and it's extremely instructive. I am cautioning myself as I'm reading it I can't assess performance based on those numbers, though. And that's not what they're presented for. So anybody looking at this online or seeing this, just because one school may have more students within their district going to a different school, just looking at this, and as we know, these districts, like Lowell had a bunch of students go to Summit View. Well, it's like 4 blocks from there.
Correct.
And it's a magnet school. So a lot of these numbers, as we go through them, and you were going through them, simply make sense. The bigger trend, as you mentioned, though, that's instructive as a whole. So yeah, this is great. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, and I mean, in our history, when you look at how our district was created and where they placed schools and when they placed them there's no argument that there was a need at the time based off of the number of kids that were living in the areas to put schools in. But when you now look at it 30 years, 40 years, 50 years later, based off of when those schools were built, a lot of them were designed truly as neighborhood schools. When we had the discussions around Blair, it was about a 1 square mile between Summit View, Lowell, Blair, and Hawthorne. I don't think it got much further than a mile in between that. And that's a lot of schools in a very small location. For instance, when Saratoga and Randall were neighborhood schools, and you had Saratoga, Whittier, Randall, and Hadfield in near proximity of each other. That concentration was great in the 1930s, 40s, up until the 1970s and 80s, because you could sustain that. But when you start getting into that declining enrollment pattern, or that enrollment shift, where most of around Waukesha was farm fields, and then that got developed into subdivisions. Well, what you're doing is you're drawing kids in, to what were established neighborhood schools. And that placement of schools, you didn't need to build a new school at the time, but that would have been the strategic move to have been made, a number of years ago. Like Hires in a great location because it captures that area. Hillcrest is in a great location. It's on that boundary. But when you get into your secondary school locations, North High School, it would be great if it was 5 miles north of where North High School is right now. That's just, from a population center, that's where it would kind of fit better. And that's one of the challenges that we see open enrollment-wise over time.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for that report. Eye-opening, some of that stuff. Alrighty, next up is the discipline work group update.
So I have nothing new to report to you, as we didn't meet in December as a committee, just when the date fell and when the holidays came upon us. Just want to, again, remind you, we have been looking at, expected, desired academic and social behavior at school. We've been looking at what we're currently doing to address that. We're identifying holes in what our current plans are. We are identifying and reviewing on a month-by-month basis where we have been at from a student discipline standpoint. We had a meeting yesterday afternoon, just a professional development session with our administrators, and we began to look at, again, where we're at. We're midway through the year. We have more office discipline referrals this year than we've had in the past. But we have a great backstory as to why we have it. And I've mentioned at this committee a number of times that, at the secondary level, for instance, we're focusing on cell phones. And all of the high school administrators were able to articulate, yes, we're seeing more referrals because we have all the staff on board, most of the staff on board. So they're referring kids, and we're seeing it in the hallway, and we're catching it. We had an elementary school point out that they've gotten very tight on the minor referral piece. So they want, if a kid is going to be referred to the office, they want to see what's been done beforehand. So minor referrals are being generated for those students. And so you're seeing a high number of referrals coded in the system, but the bulk of those referrals are minors, which are teacher-handled behaviors, off-task behavior, whatever it is. And so we're seeing that, again, that higher number, but we now know why. To a T, all of the schools still feel that last year was a much more challenging school year than what this year has been. They feel that they're able to start getting a handle on the discipline. One of our middle schools has a very high rate of referrals. Most of those referrals are minor referrals. They're things that they're starting to build into their system. A reminder that each school has a principal, a student services staff, and a teacher. And then all of the work that we do as a district-wide committee is going back to the school teams to then be generalized to what that site needs to focus on, because we know that behavioral needs are different across our system. What you'll see when I come back here in February is the beginnings of the plans that the schools are doing. And then by the third 100 days, for those of you who have sat on the T&L committee and heard about SAIL, that third 100-day period then is where we're going to see the actionable plans in place at school for the remainder of this year, and then that'll springboard us into the future.
So any questions? All righty. Moving on to other business. Recommendation for future meetings. Does anybody have any recommendations currently for topics that they'd like to see at a future meeting? Anybody? Well, if you do, email Dr. Cook and myself, and we'll get it on the agenda. And that concludes our meeting. Meeting adjourned.